Inside the game, Fix-It Felix Jr., after decades of living in a dump, smashing buildings and being thrown off the roof countless times, Ralph is getting tired of his life as a bad guy and begins therapy with other villains who advise him to carry on as normal for the sake of his colleagues. Thoughtfully, Ralph picks up a cherry and leaves his meeting that was taking place inside the Pac-Man machine, passing through the game's central station until he arrives at his arcade, where he finds the characters from his game having a party celebrating his 30th birthday. As it is an important part of the arcade, Ralph goes to the penthouse where the celebration is taking place and asks to participate, but he is very badly received by the residents of the building, who humiliate him, saying that he will destroy everything and that there is no place for villains, but for heroes who have medals. Angry and determined to get a trophy to earn the respect of the other characters, Ralph starts looking for some medals in the lost and found at Tapper's bar, but the only thing he can find is Zangief's old underwear. As soon as he gives up looking, Ralph encounters a completely crazy character from Hero's Duty, an FPS game where the protagonist has to climb a building infested by bugs to earn a medal. Interested in getting the award to be respected in his game, Ralph takes advantage of the fact that the character was scared by a cockroach and passed out, and steals his armor, leaving the soldier trapped inside the closet wearing only Zangief's underwear. After putting on the armor, Ralph rushes to the Hero's Duty and manages to arrive at the exact moment a girl puts on the token. As soon as the game starts, thousands of bugs start flying trying to eliminate the squad, and knowing that if he dies outside of his own game, he will never respawn, Ralph starts running desperate until one of the aliens devours his weapon and manages to turn its paws into super futuristic machine guns. Sensing that one of his men is totally out of control, Sergeant Calhoun, the squad leader, orders him to follow the programming and return to position so as not to get in the player's way, but instead Ralph rushes toward the Psy-Bug Tower, opening the lab and releasing millions of these Psy-Bugs. Scared, Ralph runs to the first-person shooter to try to defend himself while begging them to take him out of there, but the only thing he can do is make the player have a game over, thus causing the beacon to activate and draw the Psy-Bugs into the light where they are all incinerated. After losing in the Hero Duty, because of Ralph's fault, the girl decides to go to another game and ends up just stopping at Fix-It Felix. As the villain isn't there to destroy the buildings, there's nothing for the protagonist Felix to fix, and so the game can't happen, which leaves all the characters in a panic. Realizing that the game has crashed, the girl tells Mr. Litwick, the owner of the arcade, who puts a maintenance sign on the arcade. This means that he will call a technician to try to fix the game, but if the professional can't fix it, the machine will be shut down forever and all of them will be out of a job. As soon as him put up the poster, Q*bert arrives at the game station and announces that he saw Ralph entering the hero mission with that giant armor. To prevent his arcade from being turned off, Felix waits for the arcade to close and goes to the Hero's Duty to rescue the villain, but he is mistaken for an Psy-Bug and almost suffers a game over. While Felix tries to explain himself to the military, Ralph is climbing the building on his own to reach the medal, and once he reaches the top of the tower he begins to carefully walk through hundreds of bug eggs and finally manages to earn his long-awaited medal. However, as he is leaving the place, he ends up stepping on one of the eggs, which begins to open, releasing a small insect, which sticks to his face. While trying to get the bug out of his face, Ralph ends up releasing thousands of these Psy-Bugs and falls straight into an escape pod along with the insect in his face, flying through the central station until he reaches the Sugar Rush game. Inside this arcade, the ship starts flying wildly until they end up crashing and being ejected with such force that they fly into the trees. After the not-so-smooth landing, Ralph realizes he's lost his medal and starts looking for it until he finds it at the top of a tree. While climbing the trunk to retrieve the object, Ralph ends up meeting Vanellope, a Sugar Rush character who thinks the medal is a gold coin and decides to take it so she can participate in the race. It turns out that Vanellope is a glitch and therefore never got a coin to pay the entry fee, but now with Ralph's medal she can finally pay that fee and finally run. As the two want the object, they start racing through the tree with Vanellope managing to get the medal and Ralph falling straight into a mint pond. With her long-awaited race ticket, Vanellope goes to the start and throws the medal into the cup that registers the participants, but upon realizing that the glitch has managed to register, the Candy King immediately calls his scary donuts cops to stop her. At that moment, Ralph arrives at the place covered in mint to retrieve the medal that Vanellope stole, but he ends up scaring everyone with his appearance and completely destroying the stands, getting stuck in a cupcake in the process. With the villain immobilized, the police take him straight to the castle, where he tells the Candy King that the coin Vanellope used was his medal and asks for it back, but the monarch refuses to return it and orders the police officers to send him back to his game, forcing Ralph to flee the castle and try to retrieve the object himself. After managing to get loose and evade the cops and their devil dogs, Ralph finds the other participants in the race, and knowing that all the coins go to the winner, He decides to follow them to ask the champion to return his medal. However, when the runners stop, Ralph realizes they've gone straight for Vanellope. As the villain watches from afar, the contestants begin to bully the girl, in addition to destroying her car and throwing her into a puddle of chocolate. Disgusted by the scene, Ralph starts screaming and runs toward the runners to scare them. With her car destroyed, Vanellope manages to convince the villain to go with her to the car bakery, where they participate in a decoration minigame, but Ralph ends up messing up and knocking all the decorations down at once, building a Frankenstein of the sweet cars. But while they were making this true work of art, one of the bakery employees saw everything through the security camera and alerted the Candy King, who went straight there accompanied by his fearsome police officers. Upon being immediately confronted, Ralph throws candy icing on the monarch's face, and together with Vanellope manages to escape into a volcano made of scalding soda and Mentos. Finally free and with her first real car, Vanellope begins to train both driving and controlling her flaws, and with Ralph's help she manages to become a better and better driver. In his castle, the Candy King uses a command on the NES controller to get into the programming room to get Ralph's medal. As soon as he retrieves the object, the king leaves and goes in the direction of the villain, and as soon as he finds him, he returns the medal and tells about why everyone wants to prevent Vanellope from participating in the race. It turns out that if the girl is chosen by the players and wins the competition, they will lose due to her uncontrollable defects and the game will be turned off. When this happens, everyone will exit the arcade normally, except Vanellope, who, being a glitch, will not be able to leave and will be turned off along with the game. Sad to hear this, Ralph goes to Vanellope, who gives him a medal she made herself, saying he is a hero to her, but the villain completely ignores and tries to convince her not to participate in the race. But realizing that she won't give up, Ralph has no choice but to destroy the car they built together, while she watches helplessly. At the same time, knowing that without a beacon it won't be long before the Psy Bug multiplies and devours the Sugar Rush and all the other games, the sergeant heads towards the arcade accompanied by Felix, who is looking for Ralph. Once they arrive in Module C, the sergeant tries to use her radar to find the Insitronic, but the sugar particles from this game completely confuse the device, causing them to walk around aimlessly while the Psy Bug is getting ready to lay her eggs. After a while looking on foot, Felix fixes the ship and together with the sergeant he starts flying around the game looking for any sign of his targets, but the small contractor ends up irritating the girl, who kicks him out of the module. With no way of walking around looking for Ralph, Felix walks to the castle to ask if they've seen the villain, but Sour Bill, the king's right-hand man, opens a trapdoor that throws the little guy straight into the dungeon. At the same time, the sergeant is exploring one of the biomes when the ground begins to give way under her feet, revealing thousands of Psy Bugs hidden beneath the earth. Sad, but with his long-awaited medal, Ralph returns to his game where he finds the building almost completely empty. The last of the villagers then tells the villain that after he left, Felix left for the Sugar Rush after him and so far has not returned, and already knowing that without both of them the game will soon be turned off, the other characters decided to abandon everything, and went to some other place. Feeling bad about having ruined the lives of everyone around him for a medal, Ralph throws the object away, which ends up hitting the arcade screen, knocking down the malfunctioning game's warning. Looking at the Sugar Rush machine from the outside, Ralph sees Vanellope's designs stamped on the arcade. Wanting to find out why the glitch is the theme of an arcade machine, Ralph goes back to the Sugar Rush and goes straight to the castle where he meets Sour Bill, taking a lick of the candy to find out if it actually tasted that way. Afraid of being licked until he disappears, Sour Bill tells Ralph that before the Sweet King arrived, Vanellope was a runner like everyone else, but for some reason the monarch tried to erase her from the programming, turning her into the glitch she is today. But even knowing this information, Bill can't remember the reason behind it, as the king has locked away all the characters' memories. Lastly, Bill says that she is trapped in the dungeon along with Felix and reveals that this is why the king tries to prevent Vanellope from running, because if she crosses the finish line, automatically the game will be reset and she will no longer be a glitch. In the dungeon, Ralph frees Felix and hands over the remains of Vanellope's car for him to repair. With the vehicle ready, Ralph goes to the girl to apologize and take her to the race that is about to start. At the starting line, the runners start the first lap, but Vanellope is close behind at full speed and quickly catches up to the last places when they reach the chewing gum phase. Here runners have to pass giant spheres that can crush them, while trying to dodge the bonus powers of the top finishers, just like Mario Kart. Once they reach the next stage, the runners have to climb a mountain of cake, but when they realize that Vanellope is catching up to them, that group of brats who destroy their car decide to light some cherry bombs to try to explode it, but Vanellope manages to dodge and even outrun the group with the help of her glitch. As soon as she passes the ramp, the girl finally manages to take second place right behind the Candy King. At the finish line, Felix and Ralph are watching the race when suddenly the sergeant arrives and lands a supreme punch in the villain's face, warning that the Psy-Bug he brought has multiplied and will now devour everything within the game. At that moment the flying cockroaches come out from underground and start devouring everything they see in front of them. Unaware of what is happening, Vanellope manages to overtake the Candy King in the icy fields, but the cheater Monarch cuts his way across an unfinished track and nearly flips the girl's car. The Candy King then, completely mad, assumes his true Turbo form while trying to get her out of the race. Turbo was the protagonist of one of the most popular arcade games, but when a new racing game appeared that was more successful than his, Turbo invaded the other arcade and started to disturb the players, causing both machines to be turned off. Without his game, Turbo went on the sugar rush and reprogrammed that whole world to make everyone believe that he was the king, and that Princess Vanellope was a glitch, who needs to be exterminated. That's why the sweet castle is pink and the girl's image is stamped on the arcade. Focused on continuing her race, Vanellope uses her glitch to get the car back on track and back into first place while Turbo hits the cave wall and is devoured by one of the Psy-Bugs. Meanwhile, Vanellope accelerates towards the finish line to finish the race, but the Psy-Bug end up causing an accident, which completely destroys the girl's car. With no way to cross the finish line, Ralph takes Vanellope and tries to get her out of there. Since she is still considered a glitch, the game doesn't allow her to leave. At that moment, Ralph remembers the beacon he had in Hero's Duty, and decides to try to improvise one to eliminate these insects. He then takes the sergeant's floating skateboard and goes to the Coca-Cola volcano and starts hitting the mints to drop them in the soda to cause an eruption. However, while trying to execute his plan, Turbo reappears fused within Psy-Bug to try to stop him. With his newfound powers, Turbo grabs Ralph by the leg and starts flying away from the volcano, while forcing him to watch Vanellope being cornered by the bugs. To save the girl, Ralph decides to sacrifice himself by breaking free from the villain's grip and falling from a gigantic height right on top of the candies. Seeing Ralph in freefall, Vanellope uses her glitch to get past the Psy-Bug and picks up a car that she uses to save him just as he is about to fall into the soda. As soon as the mint touches the soda, a real eruption begins to occur, generating a light so strong that it begins to attract all insects to their death, including Turbo himself. With the Insatronics eliminated, Felix fixes Vanellope's car for her to finally cross the finish line. The moment the girl does this, the entire game is reset and things automatically fix themselves, with Vanellope returning to her princess post and being respected by everyone in the Sweet Rush, including players who love the glitches she makes. With his mission completed, Ralph returns to his game, where he invites characters from other disconnected games to participate in bonus stages and is respected by his arcade peers as the best villain in the arcade. We will now move on to Ralph Breaks the Internet. After a long time without any new machines in the arcade, all the characters are anxious when they see that a new wire will be plugged in, believing it to be a new game, but they are frustrated when they discover that it is actually a Wi-Fi router. As soon as he realizes the curiosity of the other characters about what it was, Sonic explains to them that this is a device that serves to enter the internet, the digital world of humans. At that moment, the security agent of the central station appears and warns that none of them should enter there, as it is extremely dangerous and very difficult to get back. Disappointed, Vanellope tells Ralph that she wants a new racing game or new tracks to race on, and trying to help her, the big guy uses his strength to improvise a new circuit in the middle of the race, and as soon as he sees the track, Vanellope totally ignores the command of the player and follows the improvised road, but the human ends up forcing the machine too much and breaks the steering wheel, in addition to making the princess leave the track and end up in the middle of the chocolate swamp. After breaking the steering wheel, the girl calls Mr. Litwick, who tries to plug the object back into place, but he ends up pushing too hard and breaks the steering wheel in half. Litwick then goes on the internet and finds a new one on eBay to replace, but when he sees the price he realizes that the object costs more than the arcade profits in a year, so he decides to unplug the machine and send it to the junkyard. Upon realizing that Mr. Litwick will shut down the game, all the thousands of characters start to desperately flee to the station, where they stay until they find a new home. Ralph starts to feel extremely guilty, and while talking to Felix, he has the idea of going online and looking for the steering wheel on eBay on his own. Ralph then goes to Vanellope and tells her about his plan. Together they pass through the security tape that the power strip has placed and end up inside the router, which is completely empty and off. In another part of the arcade, Mr. Litwick finishes configuring the modem and finally gets the internet working. At that moment, the room where Vanellope and Ralph are starts to light up and a small avatar of Mr. Litwick appears out of nowhere and goes through the internet cable. Excited, Vanellope runs to the cable and Ralph follows close behind, traveling at speed of light until they reach the great internet. Not knowing where to go, The duo goes to the search engine and gets the address of the steering wheel on eBay, but as soon as they arrive they come across an auction. Believing that all it takes is shouting a higher number than the other people to win, Vanellope and Ralph start to raise the price of the object absurdly, buying the steering wheel that was $275 for $27,000. But when it's time to put the delivery address, they realize that those numbers they were screaming were actually the humans' money, and when realizing that they don't have money, the attendant says that the duo has 24 hours to pay or will lose the item. With no alternative, the duo looks for a pop-up that promises quick cash, and when they arrive on the site, the man hands them a poster of a character's car from the game Slaughter Race, saying he will pay $40,000 if they get that item. Upon arriving in the game, they start exploring the place and quickly discover why it got that name when they see a gigantic white shark coming out of the manhole and devouring a not-so-friendly dog. After some time looking around the city, they find the car inside a shed about to be stolen by a couple of players, but Shank, the owner of the car, appears with her gang and one of his men eliminates the duo using a flamethrower. Knowing what they are capable of, Ralph decides to leave the shed and distract the group while Vanellope takes the car and carries Ralph on the hood, while they are pursued by Shank's gang. After getting rid of the bull car, Vanellope starts doing some insane stunts until they come to a blocked tunnel, but the girl manages to get around this obstacle with her glitch, and when Shank's turn comes, she can jump without difficulty, and corners the duo along with their group. Ralph gets out of the car and starts telling how he destroyed the sugar rush and that he needs money to fix things. Shank then tells them that they can make money by going viral on BuzzTube. And so, create an account for Ralph and record the first video to try to go viral. Following her lead, the duo starts heading to the BuzzTube address, but on the way an eBay alert says their offer expires in 8 hours. In a hurry, they rush to the site where they discover that in a short time Ralph's video already has 1.3 million likes. As it went viral, Ralph manages to go straight to Yes, the site's algorithm, to chat, and there he discovers that his video has netted him the immense fortune of $43. Thinking about getting more money, Vanellope has the idea of going back to Shank and asking for help in some other way, but Ralph is jealous of the girl's admiration for her and decides to insist on BuzzTube, imitating what the others are doing and creating. Trying to boost Ralph's videos, Yes sends her pop-ups to call people and Vanellope volunteers to also work as a pop-up, going to Disney's website where she manages to redirect several people to BuzzTube, but she ends up bumping into one group of stormtrooper who start chasing her around the site, as she passes several famous characters. About to be cornered, Vanellope uses her glitch to get into a room where she hides along with the Disney princesses. After managing to outwit the stormtroopers, Vanellope gets a call from Ralph, telling him that he now has over $30,000 and they've finally got enough money to pay for the steering wheel. Before heading to eBay, Vanellope stops by the Slaughter Race to say goodbye and begins to vent to Shank. At that moment, Ralph calls her, and because of the vibration the device ends up falling to the floor and answering the call in silent mode. Unaware that Ralph is listening, Vanellope says that she doesn't want to go back to her old life and that she wants to stay there, because this is the racing game of her dreams. In an extremely selfish move, Ralph goes to the deep web and buys a virus to put in the Slaughter Race. Once inside the game, the virus begins to circulate looking for a vulnerability, but it finds it precisely in Vanellope and begins to replicate its glitch throughout the game. Realizing that everything is buggy, the server automatically starts the restart process, and as it doesn't belong to the game, if Vanellope doesn't get out of there soon she will be deleted. Shank then starts to guide the girl out, but in the middle of the way a building starts to collapse and falls right on top of her. Knowing that it is only a matter of time before Vanellope is deleted by the server, Ralph enters the game and finds her under the rubble, managing to exit the game at the last second before the reboot. Upon regaining consciousness and finding out what Ralph did, Vanellope is furious, fighting with him and throwing away the medal she gave him, going out alone on the internet. At the same time, the virus manages to get out of the server through the hole Ralph made and copies the giant's code, believing it to be some kind of bug, and spreads all over the internet, looking for Vanellope and destroying everything along the way. As soon as they find her, the dozens of Ralph clones start chasing her to the Seeker, where she hides next to the original Ralph. Within the site, the search engine has the idea of attracting parasites into the antivirus. He then asks for the help of Yes, who has an ultra-fast ship, and begins to attract the viruses, but they begin to merge, forming a giant hand that throws the vehicle into a building. Outside, the viruses form a colossal Ralph, and as Vanellope and Yes flee, the villain starts hitting the virus using a powerful pin, but Malware takes revenge by hitting him with a supreme punch with its gigantic hand, making the real Ralph fly far away. He then takes Vanellope and starts climbing the Google building. At the top, Ralph manages to distract the virus, giving the girl the opportunity to escape, but realizing that he has been caught and will be eliminated, Vanellope decides to surrender and stay with the virus. but Ralph manages to convince him that letting the girl free is better, and that even apart they will remain friends. With this, all the insecurity of the virus code is corrected and it simply falls apart, but Ralph, who was in the Megazord's hand, goes into free fall. To save him, the princesses begin to mobilize and Moana uses her powers to create a jet of water that Elsa freezes, creating an ice slide on which the villain slides. Merida then uses her arrows to mount a kind of parachute with the princesses' dresses, and Pocahontas uses her connection to nature to summon a wind that takes him calmly to a bed, and finally, Tiana puts her frog to kiss Ralph. After all this chaos, Shank adds Vanellope's code to the slaughter race so that she can respawn and stay there without worry. Before she joins her new game, Ralph retrieves the medal that was broken in half and assembles two laces, leaving one half of the heart with him and the other with Vanellope.